Hello, Councillor Ludwig. Or sorry, Councillor DeAndrade, my apologies.
You know what happens? The latest link didn't work. So I went to the old one. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, bizarre because I tried the new one. So anyhow, that's what happened.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope no one else is having a problem.
No problem.
Well, you made it, Councillor Ludwig. That's impressive considering what you've got going on.
Is that any idea? Yeah, thank you. I'm surrounded by boxes as we speak.
Oh, how stressful for you.
Okay, good afternoon. There you are, Councillor Ludwig. You did make it.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, who are we missing? Anybody? No, we're all here. And corporate officer, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, you're ready.
Okay, thank you. I don't need a mask or anything. I'm good. Welcome everybody to the Committee of the Whole agenda for the town of Gibsons for May 18. And we acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. We have a very, very full agenda today. And I question whether we're going to finish it, but we will start it and we'll get through as much as we can. So the number of reports and a couple of very large items on the agenda to discuss. So first of all, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I have 3:02 on my clock. I don't know if everybody else has got. And then motion to approve the agenda, please. Councillor DeAndrade, Councillor Kroll, all in favor of approval? Thank you very much. We'll go right on to, well, first of all, a motion to receive all reports on the agenda. Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Ludwig, thank you very much. And all in favor of that? Thank you very much. And I want to point out that Councillor Ludwig has a new background. Yeah. And congratulations on your move. I hope it went smoothly for you.
A work in progress, let's just put it that way.
See, I'm looking a little yellow under these lights here. I don't know what's happened. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we will go directly then to, we have 1, 2, 3 planning reports, and Kirsten, Katie, and Kirsten. So we'll go right to Kirsten Rockins, our planner, for the first one, which is item 3.1, zoning amendment application for 1100 Gibsons Way. Who's going to step in on this one?
I think Kirsten might be stuck in the attendees list. So
Oh.
Rebecca, can you bring her over, please?
I don't see her there.
It says planner 2. They're actually both listed as planner 2s.
Oh,
They should be
sorry.
planner 1s. But could you drag her over, please?
She's not there.
She's at the very bottom of the, oh, she's not in. Okay, is she in the waiting room?
No, there is no waiting room on this one.
Okay. Should we switch items 3.1 and 3.2 until Kirsten can log in?
Yeah, I think rather than slow things down, why don't we do that? Katie, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. I'll share my screen.
Okay. Council's okay with that change for now? Thank you. Okay, so you go ahead then, Katie.
Thank you. Okay, so we are looking at the variance for 517 Marine Drive. Now, the town of Gibsons has received an application for a development variance permit to decrease the side and front setbacks, increase the gross floor area, and increase the driveway width at 517 Marine Drive. Now, this property is located on Marine Drive opposite Coles Marine and has a driveway to the rear on McCall Lane right here. Now, the applicant is proposing to tear down the existing single-family dwelling and build a new duplex with a secondary suite on each side. Now, these photos show the existing home from Marine Drive, and as you can see from the photo, there's a steep drop from the property line to Marine Drive. Now, this is a pano shot that's taken from McCall Lane. So you've got 517 Marine Drive right here behind this vegetated carport. And as you can see, the home that's uphill is several meters higher and looks over the existing home. Now, the property is zoned R3, which allows for a single family home or a duplex, and is located within both the view protection area sub-area E and the general view protection area. Now, if the regulations of the sub-areas differ from those in the general view protection area or the R3 zone, the provisions of the sub-area take precedence over the general view protection area or the R3 zone. Now, unfortunately, in the case of the sub-area E, this sub-area only defines the rear setback, which is 6 meters, and the height, which is 10 meters from the average grade at the property line at Marine Drive. Now, each sub-area provides an illustration to explain the text, as you can see here. And it seems to show a 0 meter front setback and a 6 meter rear setback, but because the text doesn't speak to the front setback or refer to this illustration, we have to use the setback from the R3 zone for the front setback. So it's a little bit complex. Now, this table here shows the setbacks for this property. So the sub-area E talks to the rear setback and the height, 6 meters for the rear, 10 meters from the height. Then you have the general view protection regulations, which limits the gross floor area depending on the lot size. And then it also limits the side setback. So it talks about a sum of 4.5 meters for both sides and 1.5 meters for the lease side. And then the R3 zone speaks to lot coverage, which is 50%, and the front setback, which is 7.5 meters. Now, the site plan at the top of the screen up here shows the building envelope conforming to all of the zoning bylaw conditions. And it should be noted that the floor area of this footprint is 214 square meters. Now, the general view protection regulation limits the floor area for the gross floor area of a house on this property to 232 square meters. So this would mean that a 2-story home on this lot, which would be under that maximum 10-meter height, would be over the gross floor area limit at 428 square meters. Now, this site plan down here shows the proposal that the applicants are asking for. So the applicant proposes to extend the building out to the sides by 1.5 meters on both sides, and to reduce the front property line from 7.5 up here to 1 meter. And then you can see that the rear doesn't extend back to that 6 meters. They've pushed it forward to 11.76 meters from the rear property line. so that they can reduce the amount of excavation that's required because it's a very steep lot. And it helps to keep the building as low as possible, so it reduces any impact on neighboring properties. Now, this is the proposal. This is a cross section, so you can see that the proposed, this is a proposed duplex. The purple shaded unit is the secondary suite, which would be accessed from Marine Drive. And then the orange unit is the main duplex unit. Now, the building is proposed to be 9 meters high from Marine Drive, under that 10-meter allowance. And the building steps back, as you can see here, to allow for the neighbors to retain their cross views of the ocean. Now, in terms of parking, the town's bylaw speaks to driveways being located on the least busy road where possible. So the applicants have decided not to create a driveway on Marine Drive, but to have all parking at McCall Lane, which is why they've asked for a slightly wider driveway. They've also said that if they don't put anything on Marine Drive, we can retain that on-street public parking for visitors and anyone in the town. So this image shows the proposed building in respect to the properties uphill. And as you can see, the homes that are uphill would look over this house. Now the blue dotted line is the maximum height that these guys can go into. And you can see that they are they conform to that maximum height. So the next few slides are renderings of the proposal, and they show a visual of what the proposal should look like in reality. So you can see that the building is going to be slightly taller than the existing home, and you can see slightly taller than the neighbors. And the secondary suites have been pulled closer to Marine Drive, and then you've got this stepped back massing. Now this is shown from McCall Lane, and you can see that the home is to be less than 1 story from McCall Lane. And the building has been pushed closer to the front lot line, and this enables some windows at the rear at the grade level. And this image shows the stepping down of the building, and the front door of each duplex on each side would be on the side. So you would come down the side to your front door, and you would access your secondary suites from here and go in here. So the variance requests are as follows: reducing the front setback from 7.5 to 1 meter, reducing the side setbacks to 1.5 meters on each side, increasing the gross floor area to 450 square meters, and increasing the 4.5 meter driveway. Staff have assessed the variance through Council Policy 3.9, which is included in the staff report. And we conclude that there are relatively few homes in the town that fall under both the general view protection guidelines and the sub-area guidelines. So this is quite a unique situation. We also note that the general view protection regulations for gross floor area and the setbacks under sub-area E don't align with one another, especially on this block, which allows for duplexes on smaller lots. So staff recommend notifying neighbours of the requested variance and then forwarding these recommendations to the council meeting for adoption tonight. Now we have the applicants in the audience, Ricardo, Joe, and Renee, and so they'll be available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Katie. Could you go back and, for my purposes, put up the slide that showed the unit, say for a side profile with the as proposed of the new development?
For sure, yeah.
Okay, that's good, yeah. So in terms of the front setback, it's really that one suite that's pushing the need for a variance on that one that setback. Is that correct?
Yes, so you'd have because it's a duplex, there's 4 units on the lot.
That's correct.
And so there'll be 2 secondary suites on this base level, and they would be pushed 1 meter or 1.2 meters to the property line.
Is that dotted line I see there that runs close to the sections of the two purple units? Is that dotted perpendicular line? Is that the setback?
This one right here, this blue one.
That's right.
Yeah, so this is the 7.5 meter front setback. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's really all that's that one suite there. If that's the one suite that's taking up that space there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And you can see here that this is the existing grade of the building, so it would be set much lower than the existing house. I don't know if you can see, but the existing house is outlined right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Thank you. Council, your questions. Councilors, anything? Councilor Ladwig, I see your hand.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Thank you, Katie. I was under the impression that our secondary suites bylaw wasn't going to allow secondary suites in basements. I thought they had to be adjacent to.
Secondary suites can be within a home, so they can be underneath a property. We do have something, I think, in our zoning about having walls out 30% of your walls have to be grade, but that's it.
Councilor Diendrad.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question. I have actually concerns with the view protection zone, because if we approve this project, we set a precedent. And I think it's very challenging to deal with a precedent such as this one. I understand that the view protection zone was something that the community in this area, on the harbor area, fought really hard to have it. It's something that the community found consensus through the OCP. And just to accept a proposal that disregard this view protection, to me, is very challenging. There's also the setbacks on the side. You know, it's 1.5 meters. The total, it's 4.5. So it's going to be reduced to 3. And with the massing of the building, there will be an impact on view protection, perhaps from someone. And that's the concern that I have with the change. This is, to me, is a big spot zoning, and I have problems with that, because this one in particular will set precedent. I think if there's a willingness to update the OCP, then we should do the whole harbor for the whole area. We update the bylaw. But if we allow this project in particular, I don't think how we can handle future requests, really.
I think for clarification, Councilor Diendrad, it's not a zoning, it's a variance request.
Sorry, well,
it's consistent with zoning at the present time.
Yeah, sorry, I said zone because it's a view protection zone. Yeah. Thank you.
And the view protection you're talking about is to the side, because it doesn't reach the maximum height allowable. So it's through the sides. Is that what you're talking?
I think both the signs, and then you have the front setbacks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is some big change there, and I'm concerned with this big change. A variance, in my view, it's a detail, right? That you're just accommodating because there's it makes sense. We dealt with this last time. It was just a small corner, but I think I have concern with this big change.
Councillor Lumley, then Councillor Kroll.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd have to pick up on a little bit of what Councillor D'Andretti is putting down. My fear is that I don't know if this falls within the village character type of wants or needs from the community. It'd almost be worth. I'd still adore. Like, I think it should be put out and get some feedback from the community. But I'd almost want to put out if I'd almost want to put out an image of if the entire, that section of the town of Gibsons, like if we increased the square footage or square meters of any house and put all the setbacks in that is being requested on all the lots there, and just have a visual of what it might look like, because I'm just not sure. It's just a fear, like that, you know, the next person and then the next person will get buy a lot there, and my biggest fear is that these monster homes that will continue to go up. So it'll be Gibson's Millionaire Village instead of Gibson's Village. So that's just a fear of mine. But I'd probably still support the report to put it out to the neighborhood. But it would be interesting to see because if it is setting a precedent, then I mean, everybody could just, the next person that's doing it's going to build something that's because the view, I get the height thing. That's great that they're not adding any heights, but I think the view corridor isn't just like the view of the ocean, but it's just a standard view. So, I mean, if we could see like just a wall of buildings and then I could see the ocean, well, is that protecting the view corridor, or should I see like wisps of grass and trees between homes and so on and so forth? So, I mean, that would be my fear.
Yeah. Yeah, and before I go to Councillor Kroll, Director of Planning, would you do me a favor and could you take a look in the Local Government Act and bring up the section relative to variance as to want to just repeat my understanding is that is where council intends to issue a variance, then you go to the public. You don't go to the public to test the thing. You go to say, okay, we're happy with it. Let's put it out there. So it's one of those processes. I just want to just clarify that. So, Councillor Kroll.
Yeah, I hear the things that both Councillor Dandretti and Councillor Lumley have brought up. Looking at the side elevation, the building is only a couple of feet higher than the existing building, and it's well below what they would be permitted to build there. They could build something smaller and much higher there and still be not have to go to a variance, but might be more intrusive to views from people up the hill from them. We have a real problem. We've got a housing crisis that most people are willing to admit we have until we get an application to increase the density and capacity to accommodate people in the village. So, we either have to decide, do we want more people or do we want to retain little tiny houses and the seaside village character? So we're sort of caught on the horns of a dilemma to a certain aspect. Looking at the cost of building today and what we have available for land to build on in the community, we have to look at, a higher density and, keep the costs of supporting infrastructure down. I don't know from a market study point of view, are these the sizes of buildings that people from a duplex point of view would be willing to buy? The cost of buildings gone through the roof. So obviously building a duplex with the potential of a suite makes economic sense to recover costs. So, we talk in the community about having a region, like for the coast, having a regional growth strategy, but we're back to the issue of where do we want to go as a community with the growth strategy? We've got concerns about water. How many people do we want? So at the moment, I don't see everyone on that stretch of Marine Drive saying, hey, this is a great idea. Let's build a wall of housing. But I think, I agree with Councillor Lumley. Let's put this out for the feedback from the neighborhood. Personally, I think, we need to address the housing crisis, and this is a step in the right direction. Whether the actual square footages of the units could be brought down to, they could be brought down probably to the point that you wouldn't need a variance. But, would that be a marketable home? So there's a balance, but I think we need to have, there's the issues with the OCP, and I think we need to almost come up with a community growth strategy. What do we want? Because, this is going to be the first of many.
Thank you. Director of Planning, did you find that section? Thank you. And it's awfully small print for my big eyes.
Here it is. Yeah, so it says if a local government proposes to pass a resolution to issue a development variance permit, it must give notice in accordance with this section.
So that's the intent of our resolution. The process here is that where we intend to pass a resolution, we have to give notice. So if you don't intend to pass a resolution, you don't take it out for general public. There are other means of doing that. One would be request the developer to hold a public information meeting with staff and engage the general consensus of the community, as opposed to giving the developer kind of the indication, fairly so, that yeah, we generally support this. We'll put it out for notice. So yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, hands again, Councillor Diendrad, then Councillor Ladwig.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I agree, especially, well, actually you just put the law, so we should not dispute the law. But one of the issues that I would have with that is because you give notice to few people. And this is a community consensus. The OCP, that's, I think, we're a small town with 5,000 people with 3 planners, and everybody's overwhelmed because what we deal, it's with variances and change in OCP. So I think if we need, I understand we have a crisis, but we cannot, on name of the crisis, just to start making all these decisions. I think we need to step back a little bit and put to the public, and perhaps this is the most urgent matter. Where do we want to grow? And respect the OCP at this point, and get the feedback from the community, from the entire community, do a survey that we have good responses, and then we feel comfortable, because every time we have council meetings, we are faced with these big, hard decisions. And this in particular will open a precedent. So where do we want to go? Open precedents after precedents, and I think it seems a little bit out of control. I would prefer going on the route that we do. If this we consider, some councillors consider important, then we go to a big community consultation.
Councillor Ladwig?
Yeah, I hear Councillor Kroll's concerns about our housing crisis. Obviously, we're all very aware of that, and it's near and dear to all our hearts. But I think there's lots of areas in Gibsons that are more suitable to this type of, I mean, it is infill density, but it's a big jump for this particular neighborhood. I feel very strongly that the Heritage Hills and Lower Gibsons area should preserve some type of small village feel, because not only for the the people that live there, but also because that's our tourism attraction. That's our jewel that attracts people to our area, that says, wow, look at Gibsons. What a beautiful, quaint little village. And and I agree with Councillor D'Andrade that maybe we do need to put this question out to the community again, because this is just my opinion, and maybe I'm not representing as many, such a large part of the community as I think I am anymore. Who knows? Our community has changed and grown, and so maybe asking these questions to the broader community is needed. But personally, I do feel that a large part of the community recognizes the value of our village, the quaintness of our village, and we should try to preserve it in its quaintness. And I think that this does set a precedent that could potentially shift that quite dramatically.
Councillor Lumley?
Just quickly, it's in the harbor area plan. It's called Grain, which is the firm. That's what they call spaces between buildings to set a look of a harbor area or the character of a small town. It's called, they refer to it as grain. So it's not so much height all the time. It's also spacing and green space and so on and so forth. So anyway, it's in the harbor area plan.
Yeah, I'll speak now because I am not in favor of this. I'm not in favor of the size or the density of the project. I think that if you take a look at the picture on page 15 of your agenda package, Council, this is the overview. You'll see there is an alignment of houses along there, and this will definitely set that precedence in pushing much more forward, close to the road. And if you go 0 or 1 meter setback, you're really very close to, and not in the sense of being what can I say, a kind of a parkland type setback. Parkland has front setbacks that are fairly close, but they're intended to be areas where people are sitting out in their porches. It's a neighborhood. People walk by, they say hi to each other, and they talk to each other in the area. I appreciate the density issue that we need more suites. I'm not sure that these are going to fit the bill for affordable accommodations. Maybe even more so for short-term rentals, but I think that I would like to see that the developers, proponents rework this in terms of something that is more in keeping with the area. I'm not prepared to put it out as a variance just to have the people get upset with us and say, what the heck are we doing? We know what we're doing, and we're going to upset them. So I think that rather than do that, I'd like to see this come back in another form. I don't mind the overall height of the buildings. I mean, it is within the height. But I think that they're certainly maximizing what they can possibly do on that parcel of property, and by going so close to the road, that just invites all the neighboring properties to do the same thing as a precedent, and then we do create that wall along that stretch. Councilor Diendrad?
Yes, and in this particular case, to respect, as Councillor Lumley was saying, the grain, right? Because this is very important, the space, the breathing space. And we are in one direction, and the province itself, it's doing this whole tourism strategy, and we are pushing very hard for tourism, as like Councillor Ladwick said. This is our character. This is what we sell. This tiny, cute little town that embraces, you have all this personal thing. It's like why people go to Italy to see that, and that's why Europe is so appealing, because it has not been corrupted by development or changed that much. And I think it's very important to maintain that. And I think we need to start. And if this is I think this is a priority, because we get so many variances, so many requests. Perhaps we need to put energy in really updating the OCP and avoiding all these requests, right?
Katie, you're back.
I just wanted to see if any of the councillors have any, if they support any part of the variance request right now. So I hear that you have concerns over the front setback. And essentially that's the secondary suites that are pushing the front setbacks. If it was just a duplex with the 1.5 meter setbacks on either side, is that something that the council would be willing to move forward with? Or is it the whole project? The zoning allows for a duplex. So would you be okay with the applicants looking at a variance to the gross floor area? Because as I showed in my presentation, just conforming to the setbacks, but having a one-story home is just under the maximum floor area for the view protection area. So having a two-story, they would have to increase that gross floor area. So is that something that you'd be willing to move forward, or would you like them to review this application?
Personally speaking, I don't have a big issue with the side yard setbacks, although I would rather they not be both at 1.5. I'm not sure with the existing setback. Again, if I look at that aerial picture, The house to the town side, the village side, appears to be fairly close to property line there. And that's one thing you do. You're suddenly squeezing through between two houses with the fire equipment and stuff like that. And I don't have problems with a suite, but I think they're just maximizing everything with 2 suites and a duplex and really pushing the limits of what is possible on a single piece of property in town here, which is not a big piece of property to begin with. So that I think that I'd like to see it reworked from a perspective that more closely meets our requirements. Take a look and see what we've allowed elsewhere. That's somewhat useful for council to know, is to have we already set a precedent in this area? I mean, if I go 2 doors down towards the village, is that a much larger house that was previously approved? Was that the precedent? And everybody's following suit? I don't know. But I think that I'd have to see the particulars of a new proposal that more closely aligns with what the bylaw requires. Councilor D'Andrade?
Mayor Beamish, I struggle a little bit with the setbacks, the ones on the side in this particular case, because setbacks are set up for a reason.
Yep.
And then, the developer comes and asks, oh, can we change the setback? So next time, why someone is going to respect any setbacks? Why? What's the reason? If you can always come to council and make the request. So I think there has to be a strong reason why a setback, and in this particular area, until we proved otherwise, that there's not going to be impact on the overall view, I cannot be sympathetic, because I think I'm impacting not only the local neighborhood, but I'm impacting a whole town and the tourism industry as well. So that's my concern as a councilor.
People always have the right, as do I, or as do you, for your property to make a request. And we don't have to accept it. So they always have the right to make the request. Other comments, Councillor Ludwig?
Maybe Katie, I don't know if Katie wants to respond to that last comment first.
Katie, you.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to also bring up the fact it's in the staff report, but the view protection sub areas were brought into the previous zoning bylaw in 96. The zoning bylaw came into effect in 2005 and brought those regulations without changing anything into the zoning bylaw. And then in 2008, the general regulations of the view protection general area came into effect. So staff are unclear whether the intent was for both of these view protection regulations to be triggered at the same time. And so this is a unique situation, and it only deals with this block because this block allows for duplexes on a smaller lot. So if you look at the R3 zone, it allows for duplexes over 660 square meters of lot area, apart from in areas outlined in Schedule B, which is this sub area. So the intent is to have multifamily along this block for duplexes. The fact that we brought in last year secondary suites into duplexes further complicates this. So it's a very unique situation. It's not something that's going to happen over the entire Lower Gibson area. So that's just something to consider as well.
Thank you. Councillor Ludwig, then Councillor Grohl.
Well, ironically, as much as Mayor Beamish has more concerns with the front setback request, I have more concerns with the side setback request. So, so who knows what would happen if this came back. But at the end of the day, I mean, like Katie just mentioned, this is a unique situation. This block is unusual. It is not something that we perhaps were considering when we passed the bylaw that allows secondary suites. And maybe that needs to be considered for this particular stretch because it is a unique zoning. However, either way, I think this all these setback requests are just too much for this lot. And I would like to see the developer come back with a plan that doesn't require variances.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kroll.
Sort of further to what I was saying earlier, and Katie sort of helped back me up a bit here, was that this area has been zoned duplex. So, you know, as we did with, and I'm not saying it's part of the, you know, it's obviously not part of the view protection area, and it's, I think we're dealing with bigger lots, but, you know, maybe we have to look and put it out for public engagement. As this block was zoned for duplex, is it even possible without variances to build duplexes on them? And if it's not possible, then why is it zoned duplex? Because everyone who goes to redevelop their property, if they can't build a duplex, is going to have a problem. You know, if you do a over the top duplex, you're probably going to increase the height. So, you know, I'm just wondering if we should have a, you know, to go back to Councillor D'Andretti's comment, put it out to the community, and should this area be reconsidered for the zoning it's currently zoned as? Because, you know, we can't tell people on one hand that they can have duplexes, and then when they bring it to us, say, no, you can't do it if you can't do it without a variance. So, you know, where are we at with this thing? And however, there's another half dozen properties on the block. They're old, you know, yes, they're part of the seaside character. I'm not denying that. But the house in question here, a friend of mine used to own that house, and she got sick, couldn't afford her mortgage, and she lost the home some time ago. And even when she was living in it, she was considering it should probably be torn down because it was getting prohibitive to upkeep. So, you know, I think we almost need to decide how, you know, and that's where I was with my initial comment, you know, we need to decide how we want areas to grow and designate areas. This can't be duplex. It's part of the harbor, or it's part of this, or it's part of that. But, you know, we're going to be here for months with every lot in the block wanting to redevelop if it is zoned something, and now we're saying it can't be done. So,
Well, I don't think we're saying it can't be done. I think we're saying that this proposal doesn't meet what we would envision. Whether or not another proposal would be something that we'd see. Councillor Ladwig, you're trying to get in there, and then I think we need to move on.
I was just going to say exactly what you just said, Mayor Beamish said. I mean, I believe the two main suites are over 2,000 square feet. Those are pretty good sized suites. They could be reduced and possibly still fit. I agree with you, Councillor Kroll, that perhaps asking the community whether or not this block is appropriately zoned. I mean, that's something that is, you know, worth considering. The other approach we could take is whether or not the duplex with secondary suites applies to these smaller lots, which is something that we didn't consider when we were allowing secondary suites and duplexes for the community. So there's a few different things that we could do to kind of examine this particular block, recognizing that it's a unique situation where duplexes are allowed on smaller lots. But either way, regardless, this particular proposal that's come forward to us is too much for this size lot at this time.
I think it might be possible to rework this proposal with a single, with a duplex and a single suite, much the same configuration, just not as wide. So we don't have to do anything. We've received the report. We don't intend, unless council wants to make a motion relative to the variance. Is council, anyone choosing to move the variance recommendation? Seeing none at this time, I would just invite the owners to come back, and I think something is possible in this lot, just not this size and scope that is being proposed. So thank you very much for your opportunity to look at it. Okay, we will move on to the next item on our agenda. Now, that being said, we have our planner one with us. Well, we have two planner ones. Planner one. Okay. Who's with us? Kirsten?
Yes, hello, thank you, Mayor. I wasn't sure which planner one I am either. Yeah, and thank you to Katie for jumping in there. This application is for a rezoning of a hooked or detached portion of a large property located at Payne Road and Venture Way in order to allow its subdivision. The purpose of this report is to obtain direction to move forward with next steps of the rezoning, including giving the zoning amendment bylaw first and second reading and scheduling a public hearing. Okay. There we go. So 1100 Gibsons Way is the large property that's home to the IGA Plaza at the intersection of Payne Road and Gibsons Way. The portion of the property shown here as two hatched areas is hooked, and that is it's legally connected but physically separated from the parent parcel, in this case by Payne Road and again bisected by Venture Way. The applicants wish to subdivide or unhook these parcels from the parent parcel to allow transfer of ownership of the lands and future development on the at least one of the, well, both of the parcels. The top triangular parcel would be amalgamated with the neighboring lot at 700 Payne Road to improve development potential on that lot, while the parcel south of Venture Way would become a standalone lot for development that's in keeping with the neighboring land uses. In order to subdivide, the resulting parcels of the subdivision must meet the zoning regulations. And in this case, the existing zoning has a minimum lot size of 8,000 square meters, larger than the smallest of the planned parcels. So to allow the subdivision, the zoning amendment is requested to reduce the minimum lot size that's required. So this excerpt of the Town of Gibsons zoning map reflects that the subject lot and the surrounding lots shown in gray were formerly in the jurisdiction of the Sunshine Coast Regional District. The neighboring areas in pink to the east are of course zoned light industrial under the Town of Gibsons zoning bylaw. And while the town's boundary was expanded several years ago and all the lots shown here were annexed to the Town of Gibsons, the zoning hasn't been updated. And therefore, this rezoning also provides an opportunity to update the zoning on the subject parcel to a Town of Gibsons zone that's consistent with the land uses designated in the OCP. So as shown in purple and the subject parcels shown with little yellow stars, the OCP designates the subject parcels for service commercial land use, identifying them as part of the Gibsons light industrial area. And typically the zoning applied to these lots under this designation, I should say, is light industrial or I1 zoning. So the current zoning for the lot and parcel is a commercial 5 zone under the SCRD bylaw 310. The lot is also included in the SCRD's subdivision area F, which has the minimum lot size of 8,000 square meters to allow subdivision of the parcel. And the smallest parcel proposed to remain, that's the one south of Venture Way, as a standalone lot after subdivision would have an area less than 2,000 square meters. The proposed zoning designation, consistent with the surrounding land uses, is light industrial or I1. And the I1 zone also has a minimum lot size that's larger than the smallest planned parcel. So the amendment proposes to include a site-specific reduction to the minimum lot size, well, to a minimum lot size of 1,000 meters squared just for this parcel, reflecting its physical boundaries between Payne Road, Venture Way, and Seamount Way, and that it couldn't be any larger. The application was referred to the Squamish Nation, MOTI, the Fire Department, and the town's Building and Infrastructure Services Departments. Comments have been received from all but the Squamish Nation at this point, and all were in support of the application. The Infrastructure Services Department noted that frontage improvements will be required at the time of a future building permit on the lot or lots. Staff finds no concern with the application as proposed, and so recommends that the zoning amendment bylaw be forwarded to council for consideration of first and second readings. Also that a public hearing be scheduled for Tuesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. and to be held electronically. My apologies that the report listed Town Hall as the location. And so this recommendation's been updated in the agenda as on this slide. And lastly, that the recommendations be forwarded to tonight's council meeting for adoption. We have the applicant Connor Ware in attendance, I think, and I'm also happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Connor Ware was here, but I don't see him at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kirsten, for the presentation. And I'll go to council. Council, do you have any questions about this?
Sorry.
Councillor Ludwig, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Beamish. I'm wondering if we could, I'm just not sure that I'm following this application. Can we go to figure 2 in the report? I'm a little confused about what we're proposing here. So in figure 2, there's lots A, B, and C.
Yeah. Do you mind if I use the
Screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I use the screen from the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, we're looking at, do you see that one? The
Not yet.
image with the area, oh, sorry. I'll just start the presentation. There we go. Oh.
Simply put, while you're trying to figure that out, I don't have concerns with subdividing this small parcel off of lot C, i.e. the IGA lot. But I want more discussion around lot A, as shown in figure 2, changing
this one
Yeah.
here, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this area I think was shown as lot A on the one you're looking at. This is the parcel that has GBS and currently H&L Enterprises, for example. It's owned by the owners of GBS as one parcel. And the plan would be to amalgamate this small corner to just finish the lot and make that a usable parcel so that future development on this site could include that corner and the frontages would connect with the lot.
Okay, so that's great. Thank you. And have you talked to GBS about, so are we changing the zoning from light commercial to, or sorry, from commercial to light industrial for that whole lot A? And that's something the GBS is okay with?
I guess it's fair to say that the applicant is acting on behalf of Julie Breve, who is the owner of that lot. So she is looking to rezone it.
Okay, if that, I knew that they had plans, and if that is, because I'm fine with it either way. I just know there's been a lot of investment there, and I think.
Yes, fair question. They're involved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, Council? Councilor Diandrade?
Thank you, Mayor. It's not really a question. It's, yeah, it makes sense. You know, this is a piece of land that right now is doing nothing and is detached. It has been detached by the roads. How can we make sure that if council approves that, it doesn't really set a precedent for, that's my concern, in future for light industrial, because there's a limit of the lots have to be at least 2,000 square meters, and this will be around 1,200. So is there any way, anywhere that this could be specified? Because what I don't want in the future, unless again, we go through a whole OCP amendment and decide that 2,000 is too much, I just don't want this to be a precedent for other. And my second, maybe there's a question. If since we are doing this for the developer for a lot that right now is just a piece of completely unused land, and we're gonna make it a very valuable real estate, if there's a way that the town gets something and as a thank you, some sort of amenity, perhaps even some contribution for the art fund or anything like that.
Yeah, Councillor Ludwig, or Kirsten, go ahead, Bruce.
Sorry, I took that as somewhat of a question. So in terms of contribution, I thought it's worth mentioning that, well, the lot is bounded between Payne, Venture, and Seamount Way, and there is a cost to the developer in that all the subdivision bylaw would require them to upgrade all of those frontages when they do develop. So there will be a contribution in that. And the upper portion, they would be having to relocate a public trail to go along the edge of the property on Payne Road. I should say a public trail that crosses their private property right now.
Correct. Yeah. Who else did I see? Councilor Ladwig, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Yeah. So I just want to go back because I just don't see it marked on the plan here, but what is the square footage then of the larger hatched parcel?
That is a good question. It is, I can pull up, the survey at the moment is not a finalized subdivision survey, so that's why I haven't been specific. It is larger than 1,000 square meters and smaller than 2,000, probably closer to the 1,000. So that if the minimum lot area were 1,000 square meters, you could not further subdivide that parcel.
But it looks to be about the same size as either of those rectangular parcels across the street from it there, on Industrial Way.
That's correct. They, I believe the minimum lot size was established after those lots were created, and they are non-conforming.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have a problem with the plan, just as long as the little triangle doesn't sit as an orphan, as long as there is a kind of next step of it being consolidated with the larger parcel as intended as part of the process, because they tend to just become an overgrown piece of property that nobody looks after if we don't do anything with it. And I do think it'd be an enhancement to that corner to have something developed on it and finished off in that area. That whole area of Seamont, rather not Seamont, but yeah, Seamont Way, and around that corner there, terrible piece of asphalt in there. It needs to be improved anyway, so that whether or not this project could be encouraged to do that, or whether somebody else will do that. But yeah, so speaking to the motion, you have a motion on page in the report. I'm certainly looking for a resolution. Councillor Kroll.
I'd move the recommendations.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Ladwig. Any further discussion? Councillor Dindrad.
A clarification, Mayor. So is it a condition that if we approve this, the lot of the small triangle will be amalgamated, or?
I think that has to be, because it doesn't meet any lot size.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the setting a precedent for future, requests for smaller industrial areas. Right now, my understanding by reading the report that the minimum is 2,000, and this will be just a specific situation. How do we avoid that future requests just based on?
We don't know what the area of that lot is, that lot size is there. We're looking at, certainly that small triangle is not a lot as far as I'm concerned. It's just a piece of leftover that needs to be amalgamated.
No, I'm talking about B, the remaining, the lot that it's gonna be rezoned to industrial.
Director of Planning.
So we do have a subdivision application received for this for the subdivision, and we can't approve it, of course, because the zoning doesn't allow it. But lot B is proposed to be 1,340 square meters.
Okay.
And the northern portion is proposed to be consolidated.
Yeah, that would have to be okay. In terms of precedent, do we know what those other, like right next door, there's two lots. They're not that much bigger than in area.
I'll have to check the size of the properties next to it.
Yeah.
I can speak to the precedent concern, perhaps. The way this is written in the bylaw would be specific to this lot, so it wouldn't apply to any others. The reasons for staff support of the site-specific reduced lot area is that it is physically constrained. So another lot that were larger and trying to divide into two lots wouldn't have that same consideration.
Thank you. Okay, we have the motions have been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Oppose? Seeing none, that the motions are approved. Thank you. So then that will go on to tonight's council meeting for consideration. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to 3.4, which is the, 3.3, development permit for width of garage at 526 Ave Roads. Thank you.
There we are. Thank you. Yep, you get me for one more.
Yeah.
This application is for a development variance permit to vary the maximum width of a detached garage at 526 Shaw Road. And the purpose of the report is to obtain direction from the committee to council on whether to proceed with the application and notify neighbors of the variance request. The subject property is outlined here in blue, and the steeply sloped lot is located on the downslope side of Abbs Road. The proposed garage is to be located at the top of the lot fronting Abbs Road and is developed as part of an overall development plan to replace the older existing home with a new dwelling. So these images show the site and existing dwelling in context. The image at the lower left is taken from street level just west of the property on Abbs Road and shows the relationship of the site to uphill neighbors across Abbs Road. The upper right image shows the existing dwelling that's to be replaced with the new home and the detached garage. So this excerpt of the site plan shows the garage outlined in green with side-by-side parking for 2 vehicles. The garage is accessed by a gently sloped driveway from the street, which is raised from the current elevation with fill and a storage space beneath the garage. Under the zoning bylaw, the maximum permitted width for a detached garage sited near the front lot line is 6 meters. The applicants, however, find that the maximum width doesn't reasonably accommodate the 2 SUV vehicles that are owned by the future residents, and that the bylaw reflects an outdated design standard. So the town was presented with measurements for average SUV vehicles, and indeed, at a width of 6 meters, the garage would only allow 22 inches or 56 centimeters of space between and beside the vehicles. So staff reviewed design standards online and did find that the 6 meter width is less than the minimum size generally recommended for a 2 vehicle garage. The applicants have requested a variance to the bylaw provision to allow an additional 0.71 meters or 28 inches of width to allow a total garage width of 6.71 meters. This elevation drawing shows the front of the garage as it would be seen straight on from Abbs Road. The blue vertical lines indicate the 6 meter width that's permitted for the garage under the bylaw, and also the additional 71 centimeter width requested through the variance. So as you can see in the image, the development plans cite the home behind the garage, meaning that the area of potential view that would be obscured by the added garage width is largely occupied already by the extent of the planned dwelling. In consideration of variances, policy requires council to consider certain criteria, which are addressed in detail on pages 5 and 6 of the report. In consideration of this application, staff find these 4 criteria to be of particular relevance to council's decision. These are that the variance will not result in a significant negative impacts on neighboring properties. That there's a demonstrated need for the variance in order to permit reasonable use of the property. Next, that the overall intent of the original bylaw requirement or standard is not compromised, and that the variance does not appear to establish a precedent for other properties, but responds to a site-specific situation or difficulty. So staff's review in brief is that on one hand, the need and the rationale for the requested variance is supported, and that the extent of the potential view impact of the variance would be minor. On the other hand, the variance would set a precedent for other properties to which the bylaw provisions for garages on steep slopes apply, having a potential aggregate impact to views, however small, for uphill residents of streets in steep areas if the same variance were granted for other such projects. So council therefore needs to decide if the need and benefit of the variance to accommodate average SUV or modern vehicles and the vehicles of the owners of this particular lot outweighs consideration of the precedent that it sets. So if council wishes to proceed with the consideration of the variance request, staff recommend notifying neighbors of the requested variance. I've also added that the recommendations be forwarded to tonight's council meeting for adoption. Staff would then send out notices to neighbors and bring the application back to the June 1st council meeting with neighbor comments for consideration. Thank you, and I'll turn the floor back to you. Oh, we may have Dave Taylor, the owner of the property, in attendance. I'm not 100% sure.
Thank you very much. Council, another variance. What are your thoughts? Who wants to weigh in on this one? Oh, I'll go first. You know, what can I say? Now we're looking at variances not to accommodate more people in the town, but bigger vehicles. And I'm just not there yet. So that my sense is that I appreciate it's 22 inches between the cars. I probably don't have that much when I drive my car into my garage and park it. I don't have that much, so that I'm not entirely in favor of looking at variances to accommodate SUVs in that sense. So, but I'm happy to hear what the rest of you have to say. Councillor Ladwig.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Kirsten for your report and bring attention to your conclusion. I really, really appreciated that. I don't know if that's it's not in every report, and I found it very valuable that you kind of summarize it for us and make us think about the broader picture. So thank you for that. I guess I have a question first. Did you do a comparison of the minimum garage size in other municipalities? Like, have other municipalities generally gotten larger? Like, are we really outdated?
I didn't do that comparison, and I'm sorry I can't answer that.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can further clarify on that. This one reason that I didn't compare that is that we actually allow a larger width for a garage in general, a detached garage. This is very specific to garages on steep slopes because we allow them to be sited closer to the front lot line. And it's my understanding that the rationale for the 6 meter width would be to reduce the impact while allowing 2 cars, because 2 cars have to be accommodated on site. So, yeah.
What is our garage size elsewhere when it's not a steep?
Ooh.
Sorry, I didn't understand that. I'll leave it at that for now.
Maybe Katie or Leslie Ann can jump in with the actual. I don't know if we have a width. We have a maximum floor area of 56 square meters. And maybe we'll come back to you with that answer.
Thank you.
Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you. Yeah, I mirror Councillor Ladwig comment on the conclusion. I appreciate that. Yeah, this is another issue because you say yes to this one, and then you you set up a precedent. My concern is, I mean, 71 centimeters doesn't look too much. It's more like, what is the rationale for 6 meters? Again, is to, I believe, is view protection. Am I right? Or there's other things that taken into account?
Kirsten?
If that's a question for me, I don't know the rationale. It's not in the bylaw, but I expect that it's to balance both preservation of green space on the lot and view protection.
Yeah. So that's what I think councillors get in a very tough position, because we are asked these things, but the moment we say yes, anyone can come with more, and it could be a meter. And what's the difference between 71 and 1 meter? So I always like to understand the rationale for the bylaw for any rezoning. And I think, anyways, it just makes very challenging, the approval. That's my concern. And if you could clarify on the developer, on the letter, he said, he or she, sorry, that there are multiple neighboring properties on Abbs Road sited between 1 and 5 from the front property line exceed the width allowed in section 4.9. But then you mentioned that this would set a precedent. So I'm a little bit confused with the statement because according to the developer, this thing has already started a while ago.
Yeah, I can respond to that. There's precedent of, there are non-conforming homes that were built before the bylaw provision was created. The precedent would be for future development since creation of the bylaw.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, you've joined us. Why don't we let you have a word?
Hello, Mayor Beamish. Yes, I have indeed. Thank you for your comments and consideration. For myself as a property owner, we're fortunate that we have mobility still, but our hope is to build a home and be here for a very long time. And when you look at the space available at 22 inches between a garage wall and a vehicle, you can't actually open the door very easily to get in. You certainly can't, we can't open it far enough to let our dogs jump in and out of the car. What I want to avoid in future is having to park a vehicle on the street. It is far safer, more sightly to have the vehicle off-road. So when we asked for the variance, it was the minimum we thought we could ask for that would actually make for a great deal of more practicality for the use of a two-car garage. And in fact, that mere 12% increase in width that we're seeking from you as a variance gives you a 41% increase in space between the vehicles, just makes it a lot more usable. If we get to the point in our lives that we have any mobility issues, or if any future owner has mobility issues, they wouldn't really be able to access a vehicle if there were two parked in the garage. The area that we're in on the downhill side of Abbs Road is quite specific to 4.19 in the bylaws. We have a 23-degree slope on that lot. It's actually quite a challenging lot. And when we looked at the redesign, we were keen to try and minimize the amount of ground cover and hard cover on the lot so we could maximize the amount of greenery that would be presented to the road and to the neighbors uphill. As regards the view protection, those neighbors on the other side of the road, at least their view line from their living rooms are at least 25 feet above the center line of the road. And they actually will be looking down onto the garage, not across at the garage. And we did actually do a 3D sketch of this and forwarded it to I think, the clerk of the meeting. But there is no view impediment for the neighbors on the uphill side of the road. What I guess I'm driving at is that the situation here is quite specific. And whilst it sets a precedent in terms of being a request for a variance, I might humbly suggest that the 6-meter guideline is perhaps outdated and not consistent with modern vehicle sizes. And I'd ask you to think about maybe a bylaw amendment is more appropriate for the longer term rationale, rather than looking at this as a one-time variance that's going to create problems in the future. I think you'll find for the specific downhill side of Abbs Road, in future, this is a 60-year-old house that's decrepit and we're going to replace. When future developments come up, I think they can be sensibly accommodated and they don't need to worry about it being a precedent in the longer term if the bylaw were to be reconsidered. As the planner mentioned, elsewhere in Gibsons, you can build a garage as wide as you like, as long as you stick to all the bylaws. And in every other respect, the house we plan meets with every single bylaw requirement except this one. And I would humbly ask you to reconsider, just from the practical purposes, that it won't be an issue for our neighbors, I'm sure, and it will just add to the utility for our long-term enjoyment of the home and the garage.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We'll go back to council now. Kirsten, go ahead.
Sorry, I promised we would come back with an answer on the garage width for garages set back from the property line, and there is no width. There is only a maximum floor area of 56 square meters. And that would apply to a garage that is 4.5 meters from the property line.
Okay, Council, I think we need to look at moving on. I'm certainly of a mind to understand. I mean, I live in a more than 60-year-old house. I live in a 70 or 80-year-old house. And I do understand that at the time that these houses were designed, they didn't anticipate the challenges of today. Although some of those big American cars in the early 60s were pretty wide. So, but that being said, I'll accept the recommendations. The recommendation the neighbors be notified of the requested variance prior to a decision on issuance of the variance. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Ladwig. Any further discussion on it? Yeah. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. You can't vote, Mr. Taylor. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Okay, Council, we have a dilemma on the next bit. Number one, we have two very large reports, one which we pushed forward from the last time, and the other one we have a engineering consultant standing by to speak to us on. What's your wish? Because we're not going to either finish both of them satisfactorily tonight, given the time on the agenda. Do you want to choose one, and we could either stand the engineering consultant down and do the development permit application review process, or contrarily look at the amenity contribution policy and then come back to the application review process if we have time? Councilor Diandrade?
Thank you, Mayor. I think if you were in different circumstances, I would support leaving the DPA for, but this has been a long term. We have been discussing this for close to 2 years, and they finally came last time, and now it's going to be postponed again. And projects continue to be approved. That's a concern. We can go really quickly. I actually have a very quick rationale if we decided, and I have few motions, and perhaps we can go quickly and still we have time to address the other one. That's my suggestion, that we keep as it is.
Council, press on with the agenda. Okay, we'll press on with the agenda. I hear no contrary, so we'll go then to 3.4, the development permit application review process. And that's on page 63 of your agenda. And you have seen this before, but the Director of Planning is with us to walk us through it again.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm happy to do a presentation of this report, or I'll give you the option if you want to skip my presentation and just go straight to discussion.
Yeah. Council, do you need a further review of the report, or we? No. Okay. Sounds like we're both directly into discussion on it. So that assuming everybody's read it and this is up to date. So, let's lead the discussion. Who wants to start off? Councilor Diandrade?
Thank you, Mayor. I would start off, this report is, is just to be received. So we have received the report. Even though the report responds to few questions that Council had, it doesn't really address the need for review, for the DPA's review. And I would like to make the case that we need to review the DPAs. So first of all, the DPAs have not been updated since 2014-15. There's also the issue that many provincial legislation has changed. We have the BC Riparian Area Protection Zone, we have the Professional Governance Act, we have a change in the BC Environmental Management Act, and others. So these are legislations that change, and our DPAs have not kept up with that. There's also issues of where DPAs are unclear. They lead to errors, staff errors, they lead to risk of harms, lawsuits, lack of certainty, and major associated costs to the town, taxpayers, and development community. So we had experiences with the George. We had issues that even though the peer reviewers discuss in their reviews that there would be major geotechnical hazards that will likely result in extreme adverse impacts on the drinking water supply and the natural environment, and there is a potential to violate the BC Water Sustainability Act, the DPA 1 and 2 were still issued. Gospel Rock, we recently had the same issue. Similar issues with DPA 2. There was authorization to cut over an acre of protected sensitive dryland forest. And this was done without any consent from council. So there's also issues that DPA 1 and DPA 2, they overlap. If you look at the maps, they are almost identical, the areas. So to do a review of DPA 1 without DPA 2 really doesn't make sense. I'm also concerned with quality control, right? There was this report discussed the fact that the timeline, if we don't bring DPA 1 and or DPAs to council, a review is done in 1 to 4 weeks, including the registration in the land title office. To me, this is a little bit of concern because we are putting speed, in front of quality, potentially. And, we had issues with these DPAs in the past. So this is not just a hypothetical thing. This is a real thing that actually ended up in a non-development, and we had issues with Gospel Rock now that we are trying to move forward. So my proposal is that I'll make a quick motion, and then if council would like to discuss, I have the motions even here to facilitate. I would like to direct staff to prepare a draft request for proposal, to hire a consultant to review and update both DPA 1 and 2. And I would like to put a timeline on that. Perhaps June 9 or something very fast. Because I believe one of our staff, I think was the director of infrastructure, mentioned that there is money reserved for DPA 1 review. But it doesn't really make sense that we do the review of only one, as I mentioned before. My second motion would be to rescind the development permit authority by law until the update DPA 1 and DPA 2 guidelines have been established. I really think council has a responsibility to protect the environment and to protect our natural assets. And we had experience of basically failures with, as I just mentioned, with the issues with DPA. So I think this is not a punitive thing, but it would speed up the process, because if the authorities with council, the project with council, and there will be a lot of motivation to get the reviews done. And so my last proposal is that we make every effort to complete the review and amend the bylaw to incorporate the new DPAs 1 and 2, the new DPAs guidelines by the end of the year. So that's three motions that I believe will really address all the problems that we had with DPAs. So here we go.
Councillor Ladwig.
Sorry, Councillor DeAndretti, did you say you said had 3 motions? I only got 2. What was
the first one is to direct staff for the request for proposals, right? The second is to rescind the development of
hire consultant. You want to hire a consultant to review the DPA 1 and 2?
Yes. The second is to rescind the bylaw until we have the results of the DPA, so we don't run into any future problems. And the third one is just to put a timeline to say that we will get the DPAs and we'll incorporate into the OCP, because there's no point only having the DPAs. We need to make the amendment by December. I'm sure we have 7 months to get a request for proposal. We can get in a month or maximum 2. We just need to put the effort. And I think there's a lot of effort in other directions. There are a lot of efforts in approving development proposals, which are important, but I think this is equally important. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understood. Can I carry on a question?
Yes,
Mayor?
go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, questions more for staff, just so I understand the bigger scope of what Councillor DeAndretti is asking for. So I guess it'd be a few things, like what do we think it would cost generally to hire a consultant to review the 2 proposals, just so we can understand the full scope. And if we were to rescind the delegation authority during that timeline, how many proposals are we talking about here? I mean, I have to be honest, there's a lot of things that I want to accomplish while I'm on council that isn't necessarily related to, but at the same time, I do understand that there's we all know the type and scale and scope of proposals that we might want to have some review of. I don't necessarily want to be seeing every single one that comes to us, and I know we've discussed this already as a council as to where do you draw that line. But I think for right now, if I could just get a better understanding as to how many DPA proposals that staff get for DPA 1 and 2, that would help me in my decision making.
So right now we've got 11 active DP applications. And of those 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are DPA 1, 2, or 9. So those would all require a report to council, to committee, and then to council. So that's what we have right now on our plates. So it would take a lot of staff time, and it would delay our processes quite substantially. Just as an example, on this agenda, we had 3 development applications and 2 policy reports. So, so that's something to consider. In terms of the cost for doing a DPA 1 or DPA 2 update, we have an approved budget for $60,000 to do a DPA 1 update. So in order to get that quote, I reached out to a few different consulting firms to get an idea of what the cost would be. So when we're looking at DPA number 2, I would do the same. I would reach out to consultants and get an idea of the cost and the implications and what the process would look like. And we would typically wrap that into a budget proposal and bring it to council for consideration. We do have on the books, or we're hoping to update our OCP. And that would include that we could maybe wrap in the DPA 2 update to the OCP update. And that also looked at the form and character. But yeah, we'd have to scope out what that looks like.
Other comments, councils? Mr. Newman, you have a comment?
The other thing to consider in this is what on your capital works plan would not be getting done in order for us to make time to do this review, because I believe it would be both planning and infrastructure staff. So I believe that we would have to come back to you and also tell you or make some suggestions possibly of what would have to be delayed off your 2021 work plan. And the other thing, which I'm not entirely sure how to properly address this. However, as one of the affected staff, statements were just made that staff made errors 3 times. Statements were made that staff made errors. We have gone through a review of both of the development permits in question, and staff have not made any errors in issuing those permits. Sometimes when something is spoken from the council table, it is believed that that is council's opinion. And I just feel like I need to speak up for the professionals who were on staff and dealing with these permits, that, as I say, they were reviewed exhaustively and no errors were made. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. And yeah, I concur with you on that last point, that has not been an issue in my view. I'm certainly not opposed to put it out for proposals for the DPA 1 and 2. We're not going to have anything back by June the 9th. That's fine. It just takes time to get proposals out and write up a request for proposals and get it out there and advertised and come back and evaluate it and present it to council. So that's fine. And it will take time. And in that period of time, staff could look at the workload and say, okay, here, this is what's going to be impacted by moving forward this way. So I'm not in favor of rescinding any bylaws at this time. I think staff need to continue to do their work. A lot of their works in terms of delegation of authority is also included in their job descriptions. I'm not prepared to rewrite their job descriptions at the table here by taking things out of them. So that I think that let's just, my view, move forward with a review and see what is more current and more relevant in the greater world. So, Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. If staff are going to be looking into reviewing the DP1 and 2, obviously there's implications with the OCP and how and the interface with the OCP. So, I think the bigger picture has to be looked at, not just nitpick at DP1 and 2. So obviously that's going to have to be reflected in the subsequent costs.
I'm going to go to Councillor Lumley, Councillor Ladwig, and then Councillor D'Andrade for the last word.
Yeah, I'd be in, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but might kind of make sense to get 1 and 2 done just together. I mean, I don't know how much more it could cost if, unfortunately, maybe that the first approach should have just been to do 1 and 2 together. They seem to be clearly like linked and almost overlapping at times. But yeah, I would definitely support getting those. I mean, it's on our docket for the OCP update, so it should get added in there. It has to be done at some point, so why not now?
Concurrently, yeah. Councillor Ladwig.
So I support Councillor D'Andrade's motion 1 to have them get proposals in for the review of those 2 DPAs. I also support her third motion in that we set a timeline to have this work done. I think that's a reasonable. This has been going on a long time, and I think it'd be okay for us to try to put a timeline around this.
I'd like to see what the proposals come in at. I guess that's the timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then I agree with you, Mayor. I support you, Mayor Beamish, about rescinding delegation authority, and not necessarily doing that at this time, or possibly ever. But the one thing that I would like to do, and I don't know if this goes into the review of DPA 1 and 2, or if this is maybe a motion I'm now making. I would like to define what significant enhancement means in our delegation authority, because for me that's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. Like that's even some advice that we've received says that's it's up to interpretation as to when staff should seek guidance from council on a significant enhancement, and I would like to have that defined. So whether or not that's done through the DPA 1 and 2 review, or whether that's a third motion, I'm not sure, but I'm putting that out there that I would like to have that and a significant enhancement defined in our delegation authority bylaw.
Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you. I appreciate Council's feedback. I think my concern with the delegation authority bylaw, again, is not like a punitive thing, is because that's the issue. To define significant enhancement is not enough. We also need to update the guidelines. We don't have, there may be new objectives, right? We have a whole plan of natural asset management. So there is more preoccupation and more regards with the environment that we have to incorporate into the guidelines. Perhaps there's not a big change, but perhaps there are some. There's also the issue of risk assessment. Last time it was staff that made a decision of the tolerance, the risk tolerance that the community should have with regards to Gibson's aquifer. I don't think this is correct, but I'm not blaming staff. What I'm saying is the current legislation, it doesn't allow, it allows for staff to interpret, well, this is not significant development, and therefore we should approve. And that's the part that is a blurry, right? I don't know if we will be able, I mean, perhaps there is a way, but I struggle with trying to come up with terminology for significance development. At the end, I couldn't get anything, because you get all this wording that they have like similar, it's too much of a matter of interpretation. So my concern is that, and specific threshold that we need to set up, right? I mean, and that's the thing, significant enhancement, it's not a viable threshold, because it's too much, it gives room to interpretation, and that's my concern, right? We struggle a lot with other projects. I don't know what's coming next. So I understand that staff, I totally get that it's a lot of work to bring reports to council, but perhaps we need to slow down for a few months. How do we know what's coming is not relevant? So what we are saying is, okay, let's leave the way it is. Perhaps we have other situations similar that we had before, because we don't want to slow down the pace of development. And I think especially with the new pace of development, that's what we need to be very careful. And anyway, so that's my concern. Perhaps we can do just TPA 1 and 2, not the 9, because the 9 is more structure.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I was just going to comment that I think it's been stated that it's a matter of looking at the overall work plan of not only the staff, but council, as to see what how this would integrate into the official community plan review, what makes sense in what order to do which part of the review, and look at maybe, stand back and look at the bigger picture to see how that impacts not only council's strategic plan, but the work plan of council during the rest of their term, to see what you wish to accomplish. And I also concur that not rescinding the delegation rights, perhaps looking at the development permits that are being looked at by council over the next 6 or 7 months while the proposals are being impacted, to determine which ones you're prepared to issue and which ones you're not. But meanwhile, the staff can still bring forward their recommendations.
Thank you. Okay, it appears we have a multiplicity of recommendations out there. Does somebody want to kind of consolidate them? I mean, I see one is to issue a request for proposals for a review of the DP 1 and 2. Is that clear, Councilor Dinterat?
Yeah, and perhaps a firm can do both, right? So we don't need, because ideally we want to do this together, and perhaps doing together would we even save money, because they are basically in terms of location, they are basically the same area. I would like to put a guideline, a timeline on this, because I really would like to see this, perhaps not June 9, but can we do,
so you want a firm that has nothing else to do on their list available to do it, as opposed to a busy firm that has lots of reputation.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So I suspect that busy firm is busy. So getting the first thing out there is the RFP, so that we can find out who's available and at what cost and at what timeline that they have to do the work in. And we might have 2 or 3 choices, and the evaluation of the RFPs might say that these are 3 qualified firms. This one can do it sooner, this one will do it later, and balancing off costs with timeline and those sorts of things. That's the way it would normally be done.
I understand.
Yeah. So somebody like to make, well, Councilor Dinterat, is that the motion you would make, is that we issue an RFP, ask staff to develop and issue an RFP relative to DP 1 and 2 review? Yep. Mr. Newman, you want?
No, I saw Mr. Brown had his off mute, and he may be saying what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Yes, if I could, I think further to that, there may need to be a budget amendment if funds aren't there for both.
It may well be if depending upon how the costs come in. Those
Right.
are all considerations we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Mr. Newman.
It does take staff time to prepare an RFP, and it does take costs to have a consultant prepare the RFP. So I'm wondering if a motion could possibly be reworded so that you're not instructing us to do something that either we don't have the time for, and we might need to shuffle work priorities around, or that we don't have to have the budget for. So I'm wondering if perhaps a report back to council indicating what potential costs and demand on staff time might be. I'm also hesitant to put out an RFP asking consultants for something when it has not been established whether we actually have the budget for it, because it takes a lot of consultants' time to put together a proposal. And sometimes it's $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000 to put forward a proposal. And if we have not established that there is actually a budget for it, I think it could hurt our credibility, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, two things. One is that if we go out to an outside firm to ask them to prepare the RFP, we have apparently $60,000 already budgeted for DP 1. That money could be used perhaps to develop the RFP, and in that could be an estimate of costs that we could then look at putting a budget amendment forward at that time, saying, okay, here's what we have we need for costs, and then issue the RFP, because Mr. Newman's right, you don't issue an RFP unless you got the money in the bank. So Leslie Ann Stats?
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay, thank you for joining us. So I mean, that would be the normal process is, and we have, since we did budget $60,000 already for the DP1, that money exists, so we could use that portion of that to develop the RFP with a outside consultant, and then look at in terms of an estimated cost around that, coming back to council and saying, okay, if we proceed, this was likely to cost you, this is the additional budget amount that we require. Is that understanding, Councilor D'Andrade?
Yeah, it's just a quick mention that if we could have had this conversation almost 2 years ago, because the update is almost urgent in a way, especially with the pace of development. So I just don't want to take, no, maybe let me just, I just don't want to take this as a new issue. This has been lingering. Actually, since this was an election issue that we all 4 councillors said that they would support a DPA reviews. I have their wording here with me. So we have 4 councillors that were concerned with this. I just don't want to give the impression that this is something new. And we can have, I mean, we have budget for special circumstances. So I don't see in terms of the budget being an impediment.
Let's see what we get in terms of the director planning.
Thank you, Mayor. We did also submit that application, the UBCM grant application, and wrapped in DPA 2 into that proposal. So if we get that funding, we'll have some extra money.
Okay. Okay, so are we understanding what this recommendation is? I believe Councilor D'Andrade, was it seconded that we asked the staff to proceed with developing a proposal for the DPA 1 and 2. Okay, that's moved and seconded. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's done. Second resolution around the rescinding of the delegation bylaw. Councilor D'Andrade, were you going to move that?
Well, no, I was just, in regards to the other motion, you didn't allow time for discussion. Again, I was going to say, I still would like some timeline, because I don't want this by December and staff still didn't have the opportunity. When they saw the opportunity for the grant, they made time to put the proposal. So I just want, can we put a timeline, that we can have this request for proposal? Otherwise, this could linger another 6-8 months.
Well, We could, Director of Planning, what's a realistic timeline for you to engage somebody to develop a RFP?
I mean, it depends on council's priorities, as CAO Mark Brown just was speaking about. We've got short-term rentals at the top of the list right now. That's going to get pushed down, a staff report on that and regulating short-term rentals. We've also got the recreational water lease bylaw on the books for eelgrass conservation areas. And we've got a whole bunch of development applications coming in. And we also have one of our planners going on maternity leave soon. So we're going to be recruiting to fill a maternity leave position. So there's a lot on the go. We've got 12 active applications that are development permits. We've also got 4 zoning amendments and at least 3 DVPs and like a handful of subdivisions as well. So that includes Gospel Rock and Parkland. So it really depends on priorities.
We have a standing agreement with Urban Systems for engineering. Are they the kind of organization that would be able to put together a proposal for us?
Yeah.
So we could just ask them to do it, could we not?
We could. We do have to identify the scope of work. So we have to be clear about what is being updated and get an idea of the budget and scope. So that does take some staff time.
Mr. Brown?
It's a question actually for the Director of Planning on the UBCM application. I know some of the applications, if you've actually started the work, then you're not eligible for the grant. So that could be a part of this equation as well, that we may want to wait until the grant application is denied or approved and then proceed with actually issuing the consultant's contract. Because sometimes if it's issued before we get the grant, then you're not eligible for the money any longer.
Right. And they were I think the application said that they would let us know within 90 days of May 7th. So.
Yeah. So 90 days is August sometime. Yeah. I'm not sure that, how about having a talk with Urban Systems and just seeing what they can do and what, because even in terms of scope, I mean, can we just not hand it over to them and say, look, we want to do a DPA review. And if they need to come back to council to talk about scope and have council do all that work for them, that's fine. I appreciate you guys are otherwise occupied with other priorities of council. And so we can't, we have limited staff. We have to acknowledge that. And we have to work within the limitation that we have. Councilor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to highlight that, development is important, but why development has to take priority over security, basically, right, of our environment. So for one side, we do all our natural asset management, and by the other side, we are kind of concerned more with development. So we should balance this. And I think we have always, at least in the last decade, we have favored development, that perhaps right now we can have a little bit of priority, move to this DPA. So maybe the development can, instead of a project being approved in 1 month, they can wait maybe 2-3 months. I don't think it's the end of the world. In Vancouver, it takes a year. So perhaps we are being too fast.
Giving too good a service. It's clear we have to move forward with something so that, we have a standing arrangement with Urban Systems, perhaps asking them to come forward with an idea. I think the staff knows what they want. We have a resolution to develop a RFP, and the process of development is, of course, the scope and all these other things, and then the estimated budget. So, and we voted on that. The only thing that's not in there is a timeline that it has to come back by a certain time frame. And let's just perhaps ask staff if they could talk to Urban Systems about a timeline and what is reasonable to expect at this point in time. Okay. So The delegation bylaw, number 1054. Councilor Diandrade, you had a motion. Did you want to move that motion?
I would like to hear from CAO Brown, because he seems to have a proposal that addressed my concerns. My concerns is with, we're not going to do anything until the DPAs, but we might be having some risks. And I really don't think it's fair to have risk. I don't feel that I want staff to decide the risk that we're going to have or details. They don't have expertise in environment. You know, it shows what happened in Gospel Rock, that if this had come to council, we would not have gone through what we went through. So is there a solution, perhaps?
We don't know that. So so that Mark, I'm not sure I would need to put you on the spot on this. In terms of the delegation bylaw, I mean, it's just a matter, we just continue working forward as we are until we have change.
Well, thank you, Worship. I think it's clear that this is an important issue for council, and staff's heard you loud and clear, and they're sensitive to anything coming forward from now on that due diligence is required with regard to informing council of areas that may be outside of the DPA, and it's not that mistakes were made in the past. It's not that an error was made in the official community plan interpretation. It's just a matter of looking at areas that are sensitive that were maybe not covered off exactly with the DPA boundaries. So staff has got this particular example that shows that some of the areas aren't exactly mapped by tree. That's not the level of detail that's in an OCP. But there's certainly sensitivity around future developments to look at through this lens, and I'm sure that this will occur. That'll be any areas where it's not black and white with regard to the line and sensitive ecosystems. We'll discuss that with council.
Councilor Diandrade.
Thank you. Mayor Beamish, perhaps the director of planning said that there were 6 or 7 between DPA 1, 2, and 9, but we didn't hear how many are DPA 1 and 2. Perhaps there's not too many, and there is still not a big deal. It still can come to council.
Anybody else? Yeah. Oh, Councilor Ladwig, did I see your hand?
Sorry, I'm just seeking clarity on what we're doing right now. Are we voting on Councilor Diandrade's motion to rescind delegation authority?
She hasn't actually made the motion yet. Did she want to? Did you want to make that motion relative to the development permit delegation authority rescinding?
You're on mute, Councilor Diandrade.
For developments 1 and 2, until the DPA 1 and 2 guidelines have been established.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion?
I didn't even hear half of it. She was muted.
Okay.
Oh, would you like me to say again?
Yes, please.
Okay, that council rescinds the development permit delegation authority by law 1054 until the updated DPA 1 and DPA 2 guidelines have been established. So, but not the DPA 9 necessarily. And we can just make amendment on the bylaw. So the DPA 9 doesn't need to come to council at this point because it's peer review by Waterline. But the DPA 1 and 2, that's the ones that we have concern right now.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Okay, seeing none, no one seconded. We'll move on. You got a third motion, Councilor Diandrade? Oh, Councilor Lee.
Yeah, wouldn't it just make sense to review that again once we hear back from regarding the reviews?
That would be the process.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that was my thoughts on it, was that we'll keep the process kind of linear rather than jumping all over the place, because then you rescind it and then nothing happens, and then somebody says you shouldn't have done that, and then you put it back. I'd like to hear from, I'd like to hear back from staff, or maybe even from the consultant, as to what would be involved. And I hear what the CAO said, and as long as we don't start the process, I guess, at least if we have the information to know what's involved in the process, I think that's what we're looking for. And then council can vote whether to go forward with it or not. So.
You had a third resolution, Councilor Diendrad?
Yeah, that the town makes every effort to complete the review and amend the OCP to incorporate new DPA 1 and 2 guidelines by December.
Okay. Yeah, is that?
Perhaps we can leave this motion for once we get the.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we have approved the first motion, and that is to request the staff working with a consultant develop a terms of reference and a request for proposals for the DPA 1 and 2 review. And we'll see that come back. Councilor Ladwig?
Okay, but I'd like to make a motion, like I mentioned earlier, that we define significant enhancement in our delegation authority.
Yeah.
So I'm making that motion. I don't know if that gets done as part of our DPA 1 and 2 review, but I want that. I want that defined.
I think that could be a separate motion outside of the DPA 1 and 2 review. I think so. You made that motion to define
significant
enhancement in our development bylaws process. So seconded by Councilor Diendrad. Further discussion of that issue? Councilor Diendrad?
Yeah, I think this motion, we can ask staff to prepare this fairly soon. That doesn't need to take too long. We can, even I'll try to come up with something as well, just to support if I know staff is busy, but I think that we could put a timeline on this one. I would appreciate if Councilor Ladwig, if you like to have a timeline on that.
I was nodding my head saying I could help with it too, possibly. I don't know about timeline. I hadn't thought about that. I don't know, how do people feel about that?
I would do like by the end of June. I think we have enough time. If we don't have enough time to try to come up with something that there's a little better than significant enhancement in 1.5 months. I think we have to come up with.
Well, this is what the director of planning said. If this is a priority, then you just have to let her know like how big a priority this is, and everybody on council here has to decide how big a priority is. So.
Okay, so I'm going to say by the end of July, before we go on summer break, that we have a new definition for significant enhancement. I think that gives people time to provide some feedback to staff if they want.
I think if you're going to do that, you should do it by the second council meeting in July.
Okay.
The end of July is the end of July, and we're not meeting in August, which means it's September. So second council meeting in July.
Okay.
Let's look for a date there. Look at my calendar.
That would be July 20th.
Okay, July 20th. Okay. So 2 months.
Okay.
For a definition. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we all understand what we're voting on. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. That's approved. Okay, so we'll set this aside now until it comes back to us with a develop request for proposal and other information as we've requested. Now it's 5 o'clock. I don't know that what's council's wishes. Do you want to have a dinner break? Do you want to go into the next agenda item or put it off to the next meeting? Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to the last resolutions. Let's bring forward the resolutions for DPA 1 and 2 and significant enhancement to the council meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Moved by Councilor Andrade, seconded by Councilor Lumley. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. So we have a report. Has everybody had a chance to read it and fully understand it? The 100 pages of contribution of policy? And do you want to go through it now, or do you want to put it over to a special meeting or a next meeting? Councilor Lumley?
Next meeting, I have to pick up my children in 15 minutes.
All right. So we'll put this one over to the next committee of the whole, which is scheduled for June the 1st at 3 p.m. Okay, and apologies to whoever was standing by from Urban Systems. Thank you for the time. And by that time, we'll all have had a chance to read the report a second time to refresh ourselves. So moving next to item 4 is inquiries. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes has any inquiries for tonight or for this afternoon? No.
I am moving over Judith Bonkoff.
Thank you. Judith, thank you. Welcome. You're on mute.
I'm unmuted now.
Got you now.
And okay, hi. Okay, so here we are. I haven't given you video, but that's fine. Have you got video?
No.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and just a few comments and actually a question regarding the Marine Drive one. And I thank you very much for giving it a lot of consideration as far as the variance goes for Marine Drive. I appreciate that. It is kind of my neighborhood, and I do believe it is a very, very important that the neighborhood is considered, and whether we want to go the direction of White Rock and block housing all along the waterfront. So I appreciate that. Now, I have a question regarding the duplex zoning down there. What is that it's duplex zoning? It's a small lot. Does the duplex then get sold? Could it be divided and sold half and half?
Director of Planning?
Yes, it can.
Could be stratified then.
Yeah.
It's stratified in that, so it's not, they're not sole owners of the property. They pay a strata fee, and that's how it goes on. Okay. I did not know. I live in the same neighborhood, but I guess Marine Drive is different to my zoning where I am. And the other, consideration is those, I would love, if the council, I could ask the question whether you would consider having rentals that are purpose-built when they go into these units, that they're actually bonded to, like having them rent out as opposed to, as short-term rentals. Now, I know that might be difficult, but it is certainly a concern of mine that these go in and they just end up all as short-term rentals and not helping our housing at all.
I think that's possible. I think there are mechanisms that would allow us to do that, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you then. Thank you.
Yeah. Other inquiries? Judith, okay, gotcha.
No further hands are raised, Mayor Beamish.
Thank you very much. So we'll go on then to next meeting, which is the next meeting is to be held on Tuesday, June 1st at 3 p.m. And I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you very much. And Councillor Ladwig, will you, all in favor of adjournment? Thank you. And Councillor Ladwig, will you be joining us tonight?
Thank you for asking, Mayor Beamish. No, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to join this evening. My house is in a state of chaos right now, and we haven't even meal in our new home. So I'm stepping aside this evening, but I wanted to be here for today's discussion.
Okay. In camera is important. If you had time with your pajamas on to join us within camera, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't even done it yet.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you at 7 o'clock.